Hey guys! Part 2 of What If Naruto Learned Martial Arts and Became the Night Fist. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 8. Unknown Location. It was night as the owner of a familiar pair of teal-colored eyes gazed up at the stars from the comfort of his boat. The man in question didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a strange feeling that made him look up at the sky. His gaze slowly drifted downwards till his eyes were facing in the direction where not too long ago the man had to bid adieu to his newly found disciple. Despite having so much more he wanted to teach him, the man knew that there were certain obstacles that his blonde disciple had to face on his own. Although it hadn't made it any easier to let him go. As he sighed while scratching his head, he said to himself, I figured Naruto would run into trouble at some point, but it's bad enough he had to go and pick a fight with Suigetsu. As expected, the drunken master had soon returned to the Yami headquarters and had went to Seoul, telling him of his encounter with his protege. Naturally, when the capoeira master found out what transpired, he had quickly responded with a kick that had sent the Kempo master flying. He then had to be restrained to keep himself from killing said master before finding out all the details. Naturally, Seoul was still angry, both at Suigetsu for almost killing his disciple and Naruto for doing something so stupid. However, he also felt great pride knowing that the blonde had been able to fend off Suigetsu for some time. As expected, it gained the attention of the other masters, especially the Fist of Shadow, who was particularly eager to meet the mysterious disciple. Now, however, Seoul felt a feeling of slight uneasiness, and knew it was connected to his disciple. It obviously meant he got himself into a serious fight, but something about the feeling felt almost familiar to him, something he had felt once before. This worried him, but knew he couldn't help his disciple and only hope. The Sun Master turned once more to shores of Japan which were far from his sight. Be careful, Naruto, it's time for you to put your skills to the test. Scene change, docs. All was silent to the point where one could hear the sound of fleeing rats in the nearby warehouses. However, that sound was ignored as the two fighters stared each other down with cold looks in their eyes. Both were frozen, not taking their eyes off the other for an instant, waiting for the other to make the first move. The ninth fist remained tense, waiting for his enemy to make a move. Gotta stay on my guard, this girl isn't like that punk Kenichi. I can tell just by looking at her that if I'm not careful, who knows what might happen. As to be expected, Fenrir wanted nothing more than to plow right through the blonde before him and get to Kenichi. Sadly, that wasn't an option, as he was quickly able to deduce that she was a very skilled fighter. Beyond that, he knew very little about this girl, Myofurinji, other than what he had been told. Suffice to say, it wasn't good, namely that this girl had beaten many of Ragnarok's members without getting as much as a scratch. What was especially surprising was that she had even defeated Valkyrie without any effort. On top of that, Fenrir could tell by both her build and stance that she was highly skilled and not someone to underestimate. Thus he had been holding his ground, just waiting for her to make her move while she did the same to him, resulting in the standoff they were now engaged in. It appeared, though, that the girl was having similar thoughts, as she had been hesitant to attack so far as well. Fenrir eventually decided to break the ice. I'm going to ask you one more time, get out of my way or else I will have to move you. All the while he remained defensive, ready for the slightest movement of his opponent. As he waited for a response, the Fist's eyebrows raised slightly at the sight of a smirk on his opponent's face before she actually chuckled a bit. As expected, this got the ninth Fist slightly annoyed. Just what, pray tell, is so funny? His opponent merely looked at him with a confident and somewhat cocky look on her face. Oh, it's just funny that you think you can beat me. After that, the girl's face hardened and became cold again. More so that you think I will let you go after Kenichi, especially after how badly you hurt him the last time. After that, the girl tightened her stance, gearing up to advance. The only way you'll get to Kenichi is over my dead body. Naruto sighed slightly in annoyance at the girl's defiance. Well, if that's the way you feel, then I guess I have no choice. The two paused for a moment before Fenrir advanced, performing a cartwheel to close the distance before flipping forward. Once he was close enough, the ninth fist leaned forward onto his hands, striking at Mio with his left leg. The young teen quickly leaned back to avoid the attack before leaping backwards into the air to avoid a low spin kick from Fenrir's left leg. While in midair, Mio quickly rotated her body sideways to counter with a kick of her own, which Fenrir quickly avoided with a spin flip to the side. Mio quickly landed and pressed on her attack at her hooded adversary, getting right up at him and rocketing her fist towards him. However, before it could reach him, her fist quickly met with the bottom of Fenrir's left foot. He was still on his hands and used his right leg to support his left while looking at her with a determined face. Both fighters pushed forward, trying to overpower the other, which resulted in a brief stalemate. But it only lasted for a moment. In the next instant, the two quickly pushed themselves apart. Fenrir quickly flipped backwards to get on his feet before charging forward, Mio naturally following by pulling her fist back. Fenrir quickly drew back his left leg back before unleashing a ferocious barrage of simultaneous kicks at his female adversary. However, said blonde saw the attack coming and with a yell of determination matched his kicks with her own rain of punches. Anyone watching would have been shocked at the sight of two teenagers currently clashing high-speed kicks and punches at speeds that didn't seem humanly possible. With each contact, a small bang rang out that almost like gunfire while releasing a small shockwave. It was quite a sight. Though either fighter could gain an edge, with each attack being matched blow for blow, both were on even ground. Thus Fenrir quickly chose to change his attack as he blocked Mio's last punch before spinning to narrowly avoid her next one before unleashing a powerful spinning back kick. Mio's eyes actually widened for a brief instant as the kick quickly came towards her. However, Fenrir's eyes narrowed just as soon as he was about to make contact. Crash. All became silent. Fenrir simply held his breath, though he was obviously frustrated while his opponent seemingly eased herself. Both stood perfectly balanced with Fenrir's left leg extended and crossed with Mio's right leg, reminiscent of two katana fighting for control. The resulting block surprised the ninth fist slightly, especially at the girl's reaction time and reflexes. She's definitely better than I gave her credit for. I figured she could block my choppas, but most people wouldn't have been able to block my choppa giratorio at such close range and so quickly. Her reflexes and reaction time are incredible, easily better than anything I've seen except from masters. Looks like I'm going to have to start getting serious if I want to beat this girl. After another moment, the two fighters quickly pushed themselves backwards a few feet. Mio was actually surprised with Fenrir's speed. Have to say, he's definitely not bad. His reaction time is pretty good, and his kicks have serious power behind them. If I hadn't blocked that last kick of his, I'd be in some serious trouble. Better keep my guard up. Fenrir slowly started to shift himself back into Jenga, getting his rhythm back all the while never taking his eyes off his opponent. I must say, you're very skilled and I'm rather impressed. You obviously take your martial arts training seriously. Though both were enemies, the comment didn't contain any hints of sarcasm. It actually managed to get a smirk out of Mio. I'd say the same about you. You're definitely better than the other Ragnarok members I've met so far, though it's a pity you're wasting those skills by joining a gang of thugs. At that comment, Mio quickly jumped backwards to avoid a vicious spankano to the jaw. Her eyes narrowed as she regained her focus on Fenrir. That was close, he almost got me this time. I didn't expect him to move so fast. Fenrir, however, clearly wasn't amused by her last comment, as he readjusted himself back to Jenga. Listen, girl, say what you want about me, but don't think I'll stand here and listen to your cracks about my comrades. His voice contained deep seriousness and authority that actually surprised Mio. She wasn't going to let it distract her though, as she slowly dropped back into her stance. Fenrir, however, obviously wasn't going to wait as he shifted forward towards her before once again dropping to his hands, unleashing a powerful spin kick afterwards. Naturally, Mio dodged it only to narrowly avoid a second kick. However, Fenrir didn't stop spinning and quickly released a high-speed armada which Mio once again dodged, but due to the speed of the attacks lost her footing. Gotcha! Fenrir quickly spun one last time before leaping into the air and smashing his right leg into Mio's right cheek before following with a second kick from his left leg. The attack sent the girl flying right into a pile of crates. Fenrir simply landed on his feet before saying parafuso. He then turned his attention to the pile of now broken crates. You might as well get up. I know it's gonna take more than that to keep you. Smash. The ninth fist's eyes would have widened if it weren't for the fact that they were currently being blocked by the fist of his previously downed opponent, who was now on the offensive. Though the punch itself wasn't too painful, the disoriented capoeira fighter wasn't able to stop the roundhouse kick to the stomach that sent him flying several feet. His opponent simply watched him fly, her cheeks still red from the kick. Now we're even, pal. Thankfully, Fenrir quickly regained his sense and managed to flip himself backwards before landing on his feet. The ninth fist slowly regained his composure while wiping away some of the blood now falling down his nose. You know what? I take back what I said earlier. You're not good. No, you are extremely good. Though his mind was obviously speaking a different notion. Okay, I managed to hit her, then 2 seconds later she sends me flying. I know that kick shouldn't have laid her out, but to recover so fast. His gaze slowly focused on his opponent, who was obviously eager to continue, while the ninth fist slowly cracked his neck. I guess I should stop playing around with her and get serious. With that notion, he once again started in the Jenga position while looking at his opponent. I have to admit, you're a worthy opponent, but now it's time we got serious. As of right now, the kid gloves are off. Myo's could only offer a small nod. I couldn't agree more. With that one word, the two charged at each other at incredible speed, Fenrir unleashing a fierce choppa kick while Myo countered with a roundhouse. Both attacks collided with immense force, creating a shockwave that knocked away a number of crates and debris. The real fight was on. Scene change, Ryozanpaku. Hayato Furinji was currently peacefully sitting in the living room with the other master while enjoying a cup of tea. He was musing over his thoughts while taking a sip of the tea before turning to the window. Say, how do you think Kenichi has been progressing so far? He's been with us for a while. Sakaki was currently sipping his 6th beer while he thought things up. Well, he's made progress, but truth be told, the kid's got a long way to go before he can be considered dangerous. The karate master chuckled at his own comment while finishing his beer. While I do agree that Kenichi hasn't become a master, for someone who lacks any natural talent he's done fairly well. Kensei added whilst his face was again buried in another of his rather racy magazines. Shigeru and Apachai didn't seem too interested in the conversation, with Shigeru staring at her sword and Apachai staring at a wall. Akisame, however, who was currently working on his calligraphy, seemed rather composed, despite the slight tension all of them were feeling. All we can do is wait for our disciple to return. That's our duty as masters. He then placed his pen down. Hayato simply smiled at the group. Don't worry too much, after all Kenichi has Mio with him. I'm sure she'll keep him from getting into too much trouble. That seemed to ease the tension as the jolly master lifted his cup to take another sip. Crack. Eyes widened and turned to the master, who was currently staring at his cup. A long, jagged crack now reached from top to bottom on it. This seemingly meaningless act brought the tension back in full force, even getting Shigeru and Apachai's attention. However, none was tenser than the elder, who's still staring at the cup with an uneasy feeling. Elder, what is it? Kensei asked, his magazine on the ground and closed. Hayato merely sat there for a moment before turning around with a surprisingly grave expression on his face, one the other masters had rarely seen. This cup, Mio made it for me when she was 8 years old. The master quickly flashed back to the time when his granddaughter had handed him the cup. All eyes slowly shifted to the window in the direction the two children had gone. The elder's eyes, however, hadn't left the rather ominous crack that was now present on his granddaughter's cup. I feel a chill in the air and an ill wind blowing. Whatever is going on, I hope that Mio is alright. Scene changed the fight. Fenrir growled in aggravation as he flipped forward to deliver a flying axe kick, only for the kick to miss its target. Stop jumping around and hold still. Sadly, his words fell on deaf ears as his enemy continued to float through the air with unbelievable grace. She quickly landed a few feet away before pulling down her left eyelid and sticking out her tongue. Make me! The mocking tone in her voice only served to further aggravate the ninth fist. After their brief moment of contact, the two had been trading blows for a time before his opponent decided for a change in tactic. All of a sudden she stopped attacking directly and now shifted to dodging his attack while floating gracefully in the air before releasing her counterattacks. No matter how many attacks he released, the girl just kept managing to avoid them, and it was really starting to infuriate the blonde capoeira fighter. It also didn't help that the girl seemed to get cockier by the minute with this little power shift. "What's the matter? Angry that your fancy dance moves can't hit me?" That really got Naruto angry. It even got him to the point where he burst forward with some serious speed. Myo quickly tried to counter with a kick only for her opponent to actually seat himself on the ground with one leg out and his left hand on the ground. He then shifted himself onto his left hand before rotating his body with his left leg sideways to hit the girl who leapt up to avoid the attack. However, she wasn't able to block the second kick from his much higher right leg, which smashed into her side sending her flying. Chapeau de Kuro. Fenrir quickly finished his spin before standing back up glaring at the girl with his cold blue eyes. "Don't you dare disrespect my style. Capoeira is not just some fancy dance, it's a martial arts style that my master spent years perfecting before teaching it to me." His cold eyes then softened slightly. "I owe my master a debt I can never repay. He helped me in more ways than one, and I won't let anyone disrespect the style he and I have chosen to practice." Myo, having stopped herself from falling onto the ground, quickly flipped herself backwards to regain her footing. "Okay, that hurt. I need to think of something quick, it's getting harder to dodge this guy's attacks." At that moment a light bulb went on in the blonde's head. "Right, if I remember correctly, Grandpa told me of a way to deal with an opponent who uses capoeira once." Though at that moment said light bulb quickly went dead. Myo quickly paled. "Crap, I can't remember what he said." The girl suddenly went to a nearby pole and actually smacked her head against it. "Stupid, stupid, stupid, stupid!" Fenrir could only sweat drop at the sight of his once formidable opponent now injuring herself. "Okay, weird, but still gives me a chance to think of a way to keep her from floating away from my attacks." The fist then looked at some of the remaining crates before getting a sinister grin on his face. Without a second thought, the ninth fist quickly leapt over to the crates before turning his attention to the now disoriented girl who muttering some crazy nonsense. "Oh, look at all the kitties, so cute, hee hee hee." Again the capoeira user's sweat dropped at her stupidity before regaining his serious face. Taking one last look at the crates, the fist quickly dropped into a handstand in between the middle of the crates. "Alright, Furinji, let's see you glide your way out of this." He quickly started to rotate his body, all the while kicking each crate, smashing each one while at the same time sending hundreds of high-speed wooden shards at his enemy. Myo, having regained herself from the call, quickly took note of the deadly spears heading her way, her eyes widening. "There's no way I can dodge all of them. Only one option left." The girl then took a deep breath, closed her eyes and assumed her stance by pulling her right arm back. Her opponent, despite continuing his assault, managed to keep his focus on her. "Okay, what's she up to now?" At that instant her eyes shot open before calling out Ritaka no Ken. 1/10 of a moment's sense. In less than a second after that call, the girl's arms became virtually invisible, while all the wooden shards were suddenly obliterated with the girl's right arm now extended outward. The entire ordeal only lasts for a fraction of a second, but Fenrir could only watch in stunned silence. "How did she? I don't believe it, she destroyed every one of those shards in less than a second." Myo slowly pulled her arm back and took a calming breath before looking at her obviously shocked opponent. With a slight smirk she spoke. "Humph, almost had me there, too bad I was prepared." Naturally the ninth fist quickly shook himself out of his shock, lightly growling at the girl's arrogant tone, but held himself back out of the desire to satisfy his curiosity. "Alright, just what the hell was that? No way that's some ordinary martial arts technique. How in the world were you able to destroy all those pieces of wood in that amount of time?" The girl didn't answer at first, not exactly wanting to share her secrets, but eventually chose to enlighten him. "I used a technique called Ritaka no Kansas. It's a technique where I increase my 5 senses to their absolute limit. This allows me to see and react to things that would be considered invisible to the normal eye." With that she quickly gained a confident smirk. "While that moment may have seemed like a second to me it looked like those shards were coming towards me in slow motion." Fenrir seemed shook up at the revelation, though also rather intrigued at the prospect of such a technique. That's one hella technique. I'm curious though, I'm fairly sure you didn't pick something like that up on your own. Who's your master? Mio, however, simply dropped back into her fighting stance. Sorry, but I'm afraid that's none of your business. Her smirk was still present, though it was slowly becoming slightly more sinister. It's been fun playing with you, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to end this fight. That comment got Fenrir's blood boiling slightly. And this? You get one lucky break and you think you've won? I think it's time someone knocked you down a few pegs. Fenrir then slowly got into his Jenga stance, ready to attack when all of a sudden his opponent was gone. His eyes darted around to find her. Where'd she go? Sadly, he quickly got his answer. I'm right here. Eyes widened before darting below him just in time to watch his blonde opponent sweep both of his legs out from under him. Crap was all he managed to get out before the girl sent him upward with a hard kick to the back. Fenrir coughed violently from the force as he quickly gained altitude. He barely managed to open his eyes, searching for the girl. Damn it, where is she now? It's over. Reacting quickly, the ninth fist's eyes rose to the sky to see his opponent now high above him, and smiling at him. Not so tough when you're not on the ground, huh? Fenrir growled angrily at her. Damn you, you arrogant bitch! However, he quickly lost his defiant attitude as he watched the girl lift her right leg all the way till it was touching her face while positioning her other leg over his body. Once she was ready, the girl started to rotate her body rapidly as she made her descent. Furenji Koho Wyokeyu. Her speed continued to grow, and as she grew closer to Fenrir, the masked teen could only manage to say, "Oh shit." The girl's foot plowed into the ninth fist like a missile, causing him to violently cough up blood that actually shot right through his face mask while he felt the bones in his chest howl in agony and start to crack before he slammed right into the concrete, leaving a rather large crater. Mio, however, quickly lowered her leg before falling roughly 10 feet away from the hole. With a sigh of relief, she quickly loosened her right leg out. Man, that was close. That guy was so good I almost didn't hold back at the end. Her eyes then turned towards the crater, smoke and dust still rising up. Still, that was really close. If I hadn't remembered Grandpa's advice, who knows how that would have turned out. The girl thought back to her grandfather's words. Flashback 8 years ago. Hayato and Mio were currently in a small village in Brazil, with the elder sitting in the shadow of a tree calmly sipping tea while Mio was admiring a pair of capoeira practitioners. Her eyes were glued to the spot, watching every move with great fascination. Hayato could only chuckle at his granddaughter's antics. So you like capoeira, Mio? The young blonde quickly turned to her grandfather, shaking her head up and down with enthusiasm. Yeah, they move so fast and look so cool. It looks unbeatable. At that moment, Hayato shook his finger, indicating she was wrong. Oh no, Mio, capoeira is a powerful fighting style, but even capoeira has its flaws. Mio quickly adopted a curious look. Really? Like what, Grandpa? Hayato adopted a serious look. Alright, Mio, listen up. Should you ever face a capoeira fighter, keep this in mind. Flashback end. Capoeira is an effective style on the ground, however, it relies on constant movement. Once I knocked you off balance and sent you into the air, your technique became useless. That's why you lost. Mio stared for another moment at the crater before turning her back to go find Kenichi. She made it about 3 feet before. Don't you dare turn your back on me. Her eyes widened as she quickly turned around. That's impossible. How could he be still conscious? But it was true. In the middle of the crater stood no one but Fenrir. He looked pretty banged up, however. His signature shirt had a rather nasty-looking mark dead center where the wolf used to be. The rest of his cloths had rips, dirt marks and bloodstains, while Fenrir's mask had a small hole in the middle with blood leaking out of it. Yet his eyes still held that cold, defiant look that showed he wasn't ready to call it quits just yet as he slowly made his way out of the crater. Mio quickly frowned at his defiance before turning to face him again. Haven't you had enough already? I can tell that you took plenty of damage from that attack, and I already know how to counter your technique, so you should just give up. Naturally, she expected the injured fighter to take a hint and give up. What she wasn't expecting was for him to end up chuckling instead, till eventually it became full-blown laughter. In the midst of his laugh, the ninth fist spoke. Give up, give up, give up. Listen, lady, I don't know the meaning of the words give up. The only way you'll win this fight is if I'm laid out flat. His humor then left him. However, I'm afraid that's not gonna happen cause I'm ending this now. The fist then slowly reached into the left pocket of his jacket. Myo slowly geared herself for whatever the fist had in mind, though keeping her calm. Don't panic, the guy is on his last leg, plus I already know how to defuse his fighting style. Whatever he's planning, it won't help him. Her calmness quickly turned to confusion as she saw him produce a small portable music player and speaker. The fist then quickly looked through the players list before setting it down with the speaker and pressing play. Insert paranal, actual capoeira music. Myo could only watch in mild confusion as her opponent started again in the Jenga stance while moving to the music. At first glance it didn't appear any different to before, which left her wondering what the point of this action was. What is he doing? I know capoeira is supposed to be like a dance form, but I don't understand it. Her train of thought was quickly derailed as she just narrowly avoided a high-speed kick to the face from her opponent, who's still moving to the rhythm of the music. Myo's eyes widened at his increased speed as she tried to defend herself. How is he? Once again her thoughts were halted, unfortunately this time by an actual contact as both of her opponent's feet collided with her face, Fenrir supporting himself on one hand, his body sideways and both legs flat over his side with his other arm in between. In less than 2 seconds he was back on his feet before bringing his right knee into the girl's stomach. Spit and blood flew out of the girl's mouth upon impact as she clutched her injured abdomen, while slowly taking a few steps back, weakly opening her eye at her opponent now standing stationary. Too injured from her wound, she couldn't make out a response, though Fenrir chose to fill in the blanks. Confused how I suddenly got faster? To answer your unasked question, all you have to do is listen to the music. Due to the attacks, Myo had lost focus on the music that had been playing. However, now that it had been brought to her attention, she noticed that it was playing at a much faster beat than before. Fenrir had quickly dropped into his Jenga stance, now moving much faster, easily matching his pace to that of the fast-playing music. Like you said, capoeira is all about consistent movement. However, you must also remember that it was originally played to music. My master told me that in order to properly master capoeira you must be able to match your movement's speed to that of any music you hear. As he spoke, the music continued to increase its pace, as did Fenrir, his legs now moving so fast they were starting to actually smoke. Myo tried to regain her stance but was unable to and could only listen to the sound of Fenrir's voice and music. My master was well aware of how someone could take advantage of capoeira's need for consistent movement by knocking them off balance. So he simply learned how to make himself faster. This is his technique, rhythmico in greener, rhythmic gear. As he spoke, he gained a slight smile on his face as he geared up to finish the battle. I must say you're a very skilled fighter to force me to use this. So as a sign of respect I'll finish you with one of my master's signature techniques. His legs and body were now moving at a ridiculous speed until he burst forward right in front of his opponent, who could only look in horror. With a grin, Fenrir quickly took his front foot and rotated it with his hips while dragging his heeling on the ground before pulling it back and then flipping forward, landing on his right foot and bringing his now smoking heel down on his enemy. Perna de Sol Deus. Leg of the Sun God. The instant it made contact, Myo let out a fierce scream of pain as she felt the attack literally burn into her flesh. The feeling was reminiscent to having a hot iron shoved into your skin, it was that hot. However, the attack was not complete as Fenrir quickly slid his still scorching heel off of his victim's abdomen before spinning on the ball of his foot before bringing his leg up and smashing his now flat foot into his enemy's abdomen. The attack knocked out what little oxygen was left in her body before she was rocketed into the wall of a nearby warehouse, into which she crashed with incredible force. As to be expected, the impact left a massive crater roughly a foot deep in the stone wall. Cracks surrounded the now defeated girl, whose eyes were barely open, her abdomen badly burned from the kick. After a moment she slowly fell from the wall, coughing up a small amount of blood before losing consciousness as she met the ground. Fenrir slowly lowered his still cooling foot to the ground before taking a calming breath. He then looked at his downed opponent. With a slight sigh he simply said, "You lose." After a brief pause, Fenrir slowly turned around, ignoring the pain in his abdomen from the girl's last attack while making his way over to the downed Siegfried. Damn it, I wasn't expecting to have to break out that attack so soon. My foot feels like I stuck it in a firing barrel. Still, not bad for my first try. Now I just gotta get Siegfried out of here. Fenrir, you bastard. His eyes widened as the wounded ninth fist turned to see a furious Kenichi Shirahama flying towards him with his right fist extended. Moving fast, Fenrir quickly raised his unscorched foot to block the punch and held back the still angry disciple in front of him. At that moment, Fenrir quickly took note of Haruo Naijima, who was currently making his way over to the downed girl. With a frown, his attention returned to the enraged boy in front of him. I see you finally found your buddy, good for you. I'm curious, how much of the fight did you see? Kenichi's anger only increased as he tried to overpower his opponent. Damn it, I'm pushing with all my strength, but this guy won't budge. How can he still have this much power left after fighting Neo? Unfortunately, Fenrir quickly became annoyed at the boy's pointless persistence. As much as I would enjoy beating you into the ground, my friend over there comes first, so. With a slight cringe of pain, Fenrir pushed himself up with his burned foot before rotating his hips and smashing his left foot into his enemy's face. Kenichi had sadly been too focused on Fenrir to block it, and was sent to the ground. The ninth fist quickly flipped backwards and landed near Siegfried before placing the fifth fist's arm over his shoulder. He then turned to get away only to hear Kenichi's voice. Stop! I won't let you get away! Kenichi was once again on his feet, glaring at the fist with serious anger which only merited a sigh from the hooded fighter. Listen, Shirahama, I don't have time to play with you. Right now I have to get Sieg here some medical attention, which I would recommend you do for your girlfriend on the ground as well. The once angry disciple's eyes quickly lost their fury before turning to the downed Neo, who Naijima was currently trying to aid. Worry soon replaced anger as he clenched his fists. Damn it, he's right. I have to hurry and get Neo back to Ryozampaka now. Fenrir, seeing the boy's focus was off of him, slowly turned and continued to walk away from the docks before pausing and turning his head to Kenichi. A word of warning, Shirahama. If you want to blame anyone for the girl's injuries, blame yourself. That naturally caused Kenichi's anger to return, though Fenrir obviously wasn't intimidated. Don't think you can scare me, Shirahama. This is what happens when you don't take your training seriously and end up weak. Your friends end up fighting for you and get hurt in the process. Maybe if you weren't so weak, then the girl wouldn't have had to take the bullet for you. He then turned his back while Kenichi actually paused at his words, actually thinking over what he had said. Fenrir then stopped one last time. I warned you about what would happen if you meddled in our affairs again, Shirahama. As of right now, you and your friends are Ragnarok's #1 enemies. Pretty soon it's gonna be open season on you and the Shinpaku Alliance, so unless you want to see more of your friends end up like Blondie, I suggest you start taking your training seriously or watch everyone you care about get hurt protecting your sorry ass. With those final words, the two injured fists disappeared into the night, while Kenichi just stood there, actually shaking at Fenrir's words. Naijima quickly ran over to Kenichi. Look, Kenichi, we'd better hurry and get Neo back to the dojo. Kenichi? Seeing his friend not react, the alien boy actually put his hand on the disciple's shoulder to shake him out of it. After about a moment, he slowly turned to Naijima, making said boy actually look somewhat worried. You okay, man? Kenichi didn't quite know how to respond before simply nodding his head to respond with a yes before making his way towards Mio, all the while thinking, is this really my fault? Scene change, unknown district. Damn it, maybe I should have checked into the hospital after all. The ninth fist swore slightly to himself as he slowly and painfully made his way home. After leaving the docks, the injured but still mobile blonde had made his way to the nearest hospital before handing over his injured friend to the doctors. Once they informed him that Sieg would be okay after a few weeks, the boy walked out. Needless to say, he now was mentally kicking himself for not having himself checked in, but his dislike of hospital was one part of his old self that still hadn't left him. I didn't expect that Mio girl to be so tough. Damn, I may have won, but I definitely need to be more careful next time. After walking about 2 more blocks, he paused briefly before leaning his battered body against the wall. Just need to stop and rest for a moment. He quickly pulled his hood down, and removed his face mask, finding it progressively harder to breathe with it on. Once done, he slowly slid down the wall till he was seated on the ground, feeling weaker, as his injuries kept draining his strength. Man, it's times like this that make me wish I still had my chakra. At least then I would heal a little faster. I wonder if I can even make it back to the house. After another moment of recovery, the boy slowly stood up again, grunting in pain as a result. Well, don't have much of a choice, so I'd better get moving while I still can. However, after taking a step forward, he quickly cringed in pain before coughing up some more blood. The boy quickly clutched his chest as he fell into several garbage cans, knocking them aside before hitting the ground. Crap, that girl's attack did more damage than I thought. Things only got worse as Naruto could now feel his consciousness slowly fading away from the combination of fatigue, blood loss, and injury. As he slowly felt himself black out, he heard a rather familiar voice shout out his name. Naruto! He barely managed to get a view of the figure's shadow before darkness overtook him. Scene change, Ryozanpaku. There was an ill silence in the normally loud dojo as all the masters currently wore expressions of sorrow and anger on their faces. When the masters had heard Kenichi enter, they were at first thrilled, though said reaction was quickly lost when they saw the state Mio was in. Almost immediately, Akasame and Kensei took the battered girl from Kenichi to start working on her, while the others tried to get the story straight from Kenichi. However, he didn't say a word, which almost led to the other masters getting forceful. Yet surprisingly, it was Hayato who pulled them back, silently telling them to wait. Once the others had calmed down, they sat in silence, waiting for Akasame and Kensei to come out. Each one of the masters was currently carrying a different reaction. Sakaki was obviously angry, as he had a beer can in hand, though he had already crushed it in his grip, spilling the contents on the ground. Shigure remained stoic, though she kept flicking her sword in and out of its sheath while a rather unsettling aura encompassed her body. Apachai simply sat there with a very sad look on his face that was reminiscent of someone with a sick parent or friend. Kenichi's face, oddly enough, held a more sorrowful look that contained not only emotions of sadness but also guilt and grief. The strangest of all, however, was that of the elder, who was currently sitting with his eyes shadowed and arms crossed. His normal smile was gone from his face, though one couldn't tell if he was angry, sad, or both. After a moment of sitting in silence, they quickly heard footsteps, followed by the doors shifting open. Their eyes widened as they turned to see Kensei and Akasame with blank, somewhat grim looks on their faces. Kenichi was quick to ask, "How is she?" Kensei simply pulled his hat over his eyes and sat in fashion, which didn't help Kenichi's expression, as he now looked like he would enter a full-blown depression. Thankfully, Akasame intervened. "Don't worry, Kenichi, Mio's gonna be fine. Thankfully, her injuries weren't too bad, though the burn on her abdomen will take some time to heal. But at least this doesn't look like it will scar." All those holding their breath quickly released it at the revelation, quickly easing the tension in the air. Kenichi actually smiled for a moment. "That's great. For a second there I was really worried." Kensei, however, hadn't lost his grim expression. "Still, this isn't something we can ignore. This Fenrir fellow is obviously a much bigger threat than we originally thought." Akasame nodded. "Yes, considered he was actually able to beat Mio and do this much damage proves that he's a very formidable opponent." Sakaki actually started to show signs of anger, rising to his feet. "Well then, what are we waiting for? I say we find this punk and teach him a lesson right now." Shigure quickly pulled out her sword. "Yeah, let's go get him." Her expression was still stoic, but her aura was murderous now. However, the elder quickly raised his hand to get the others' attention. "No, we can't do that." This actually shocked the other masters. Even Akasame and Kensei were a bit surprised. "Are you kidding me, old man? This guy laid out your granddaughter, and you're telling me you aren't gonna do something about it?" Sakaki showed his surprise at the wise man's words. However, Hayato's face remained blank before adopting a serious look. "Believe me, I am just as upset as the rest of you are and would like nothing more than to take action. But it wouldn't be right. This isn't our fight to begin with, and we shouldn't involve ourselves in these matters unless it is absolutely necessary." Naturally, Sakakai wanted to argue. "He's right, Master Sakaki." All eyes quickly turned to Kenshi, who was still seated with his eyes shadowed but his fists clenched and shaking in anger. I'm the one that Ragnarok wants, and I'm the one that got Mio involved in this mess in the first place. He then raised his head, showing his defiant face. This is my battle to fight, not yours, master. Akasame and Kensei actually smiled at the boy's change in attitude. Looks like our disciple's finally starting to get it. Kenichi slowly looked to the ground. At the docks, Fenrir told me that it was my fault that Mio got hurt. Now I realize he was right. I haven't been taking my training seriously enough, and because of that Mio had to come in to save me. As a result, she got hurt, because I was too weak to do anything about it, just like Renka and Naruto were against Sujetsu. As Kenichi spoke, it was obvious he was trying to hold in the tears he wanted to shed for his friends, and the guilt he felt for their injuries. It caused all the masters to look at him with some sorrow and sympathy. I realize now that if I don't start taking this seriously, then pretty soon all of my friends are going to end up like Neo is now. He slowly stood up, quickly wiping away his tears before showing his determination and making his vow. I won't let that happen, even if I have to take down all of Ragnarok. I promise to never be weak again. There was a pause in the air before Sakaki actually started to chuckle. Well, that was quite a speech there, kid. I was really moved by it. Apapapapa, Kenichi, I'll help you get stronger. We train all day till you can knock down all your opponents, Apapapa. The Muay Thai master shouted with enthusiasm. Kensei gained a glint in his eye, as did Akasame. Well, Kenichi, if you're serious about this, then I hope you're prepared for the training we're going to put you through. Shigure simply sat silently as she thought of the many ways she would train the now encouraged disciple. However, Hayato was currently turning out the sounds of the others as he mused over a certain issue that had been plaguing his mind for quite some time now. From what Kenichi told me, Mio got that burn on her body from a superheated kick that this Fenrir boy delivered. From the sound of it, he must have combined high-speed movement and friction to build up the necessary heat. However, I only know of one man who can perform a technique like that. The elder's eyes slowly turned towards the night sky as he remembered a certain individual he had encountered many years ago. So this Fenrir boy is his disciple, huh? If so, then we may be in for some serious trouble. Scene change, unknown location. Oh man. My head won't stop spinning. What happened? The previously injured fist slowly recalled the past day's events before recalling the last occurrence before he had passed out. Right, I passed out in the alley. So why do I feel so warm? The blond boy slowly opened his blue eyes as he tried to focus on his surrounds. From what he could make out, he was in a bed in a simple-looking room. With some effort, he tried to raise himself but couldn't due to a weight on his chest. With a groan, he slowly lowered his gaze. What the heck is on me? It weighs a... All words left him as his face slowly heated up. Why? Most likely due to the fact that his attractive coworker and female friend Renko was currently asleep with her face and chest on his chest, her rather larger breasts pressing against his body. Naruto could slowly feel his brain short-circuiting, trying to process the situation and unable to find the right words to process it. What the hell is going on? Why is Renka sleeping on me, and where the hell am I? The boy's thoughts, however, were interrupted as the still sleeping girl shifted slightly while mumbling something incoherent. This action actually knocked Naruto's mind back in check as his gaze actually softened. Wow, Renka's pretty cute when she's asleep. Wait, where the heck did that come from? We're just friends. But she really is cute. After having a brief war with his mind, the blonde quickly decided to pull his arm out of the covers before placing it on the sleeping girl's shoulder. Renka, it's time to get up. With a light shake, the girl started to stir. She slowly raised herself while rubbing her eyes a bit. Oh, good morning, Naruto. Naturally, it took her mind a moment to catch up with her eyes before she quickly jolted up. In less than an instant, the girl, like usual, smashed her fist into the blonde's head, meriting a serious yelp of pain. Ow. Geez, Renka, what is it with you and hitting me when I'm injured? Sadly, Renka seemed to be especially irritable today. I'm sorry, but that's how I typically react when I find my friend lying unconscious in an alleyway looking like he just got back from some intercity gang war. Naruto's eyes quickly shot up as he recalled the last thing he heard before he passed out. That was you? Renka turned her head to the side with a huff. That's right. After I found you, I had to drag your sorry but 10 blocks before we got back to Gekurin so Master Hakubi could check on you. She then turned to Naruto with a serious look that Naruto hadn't seen on her before. So, mind telling me what exactly happened? As expected, the blonde was hesitant to respond, which only served to anger the girl further, causing her to stomp on the ground in anger. You aren't even going to tell me? I find you half dead on the ground and you expect me to just forget it? She slowly gained a sorrowful look before diverting her eyes in an almost hurt fashion. I don't understand you, Naruto. All I want to do is help you, but you won't let me. If we're really friends, then let me help you. Naruto was feeling really low right now. Truth be told, he wanted to tell Renka but knew he couldn't tell her he was in a gang or that he attacked her dad's disciple multiple times. Still, he knew he couldn't just tell her nothing. So with a sigh he spoke. I'm sorry, Renka, you're right, I should tell you. He then took a breath while feeling guilty about what he was gonna say. Hope you'll forgive me at some point, Renka. The truth is, some of those mafia creeps still in the area spotted me and ended up ambushing me. I managed to fight them off, but I guess I got hurt worse than I thought. Sorry for not telling you. Renka didn't say anything before adopting a smile on her face. Well, as long as you're okay, that's all that matters. Anyway, just remember you don't have to keep secrets from me. I'm here for you. She spoke those last words with a small amount of pink on her face. This only served to hurt Naruto more inside, but he managed to hold it down while returning the sentiment to the girl. Sure, thanks, Renka. I'm glad to know I always have you to turn to. The statement caused Renka's face to heat up some more as she felt more awkward in the boy's presence. The moment, however, was quickly shattered as Hakubi entered the room. So Renka, is our favorite blonde awake yet, or would you like to spend another hour or so with him? This comment caused both teens' faces to turn red. What are you saying, Master Hakubi? I was just checking up on him. The girl quickly looked at her obviously bare wrist and spoke. Oh, look at the time, better get to work. The embarrassed teen quickly made her way to the door, though not before catching one last glance at Naruto. With a chuckle, the old master turned to the bandaged boy in bed. Well, I'm glad to see you're alright, Naruto. I'm not sure what I would have done if something terrible had happened to you. Naruto could only offer a smile in response as he scratched the back of his head. Sorry about that, Master Hakubi. Won't happen again, I promise. The master only continued to grin. That's good to hear, though for now I would recommend you stay in bed for another few hours. No need to exert yourself and cause more injuries. Just leave the work to us for now, alright? After getting a nod from the boy, Hakubi quickly turned and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, he paused, gaining a glint in his eye. By the way, Naruto, you should know that after I treated you, Renka stayed at your side all night. She wouldn't move a single inch. With a quick glance, he saw the boy's face turn bright red, causing him to chuckle as he opened the door. Just thought you should know. With that, he shut the door, leaving Naruto to muse over what he had just been told. Trying to keep his hormones in check, the boy slowly laid his head back down on the pillow. Might as well try and get some more sleep. As the boy slowly drifted off, his mind solely focused on the information he had just received, causing his face to turn slightly pink. Though he still managed to gain a smile on his face for some reason he couldn't quite explain, as he fell asleep with one last thought. I wonder if she'll be here when I wake up again. Make. Title: Dancing to a Different Tune. Fenrir stared down at his opponent, finding it hard to stand but still refused to admit defeat. Guess I have no choice, gonna have to bust it out. Mule watched in curiosity as the ninth fist reached into his pocket before pulling out a music player. He then quickly selected a song before placing it on the ground. Naturally, the girl prepared herself for the worst. She was shocked, however, to find Fenrir had now changed into a bright red jacket and pants with several gems imprinted on the back, though his hood and mask were still present. Before she knew what was going on, a bunch of other Ragnarok members popped up all over the place, standing behind Fenrir. He turned to them. Alright guys, you ready? A shout of hell yeah rang out as the music started. All of a sudden the music started and the group suddenly broke out into surprisingly good choreographed dance moves, all the while Fenrir seemingly lip-syncing himself through his mask to the music. It's close to midnight, and something evil's lurking in the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. You start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed. 'Cause this is thriller night. And no one's gonna save you from the beast about strike. You know it's thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. As the words played, Fenrir showed off his impressive dancing skills, gradually drawing in a crowd who started cheering and taking pictures of the whole ordeal. Even Mio started to get into it. He then slowly finished off his dance with a high-speed spin before stopping as the crowd erupted into applause. All the present Ragnarok members started to cheer and congratulate each other. Fenrir naturally turned to them and spoke with an approving tone. Nice work, guys, we're well on our way to winning the dance contest next month. Not to mention, with those moves you'll definitely get the attention of the ladies pretty soon. That got some serious cheers out of the guys as they quickly watched several fan-crazy girls surround them asking for autographs and even possible dates. Oddly enough, Takeda, Yukita and Kenichi all stared in shock as Yukita slowly took off his glasses. Takeda, I think I'm starting to regret leaving Ragnarok right about now. The young boxer could only nod. Me too, man, me too. Chapter 9. Location: Warehouse. It was currently the middle of the night. Most of the area was silent, all buildings being cleared out. However, one particular building was currently inhabited by a group who was less than thrilled of recent events. The building itself was lit by several empty oil drums currently serving as lamps and a makeshift ring. Several of the lower-ranked Ragnarok flunkies were currently fighting amongst themselves, trying to either boost their egos or to show off their skills in hopes of catching the eyes of one of the 9 deadly fists. Sadly, said individuals had other more pressing concerns on their minds. Unbelievable, not only did Siegfried get laid out by the rotten punk Shirahama, but I can't even get into contact with Fenrir now. Just perfect. Loki was currently in one of his rare frustrated moments, and being rather vocal about it. Of course, that didn't mean that the other fists didn't share his sentiments. Naturally, it didn't take long for word to reach Odin about Loki's little plan, and even less for them to learn that Siegfried had been beaten by Kenichi Shirahama. Though as it currently stood, they had yet to receive any sort of word on Fenrir and the outcome of his fight, which had put several of the fists on edge. Well, Loki, perhaps you should have put some more thought into that little plan of yours before sending Siegfried and Fenrir out to do your dirty work. Loki could only sneer at Odin's comment and refused to make eye contact. Odin's right, Loki. You took a serious risk with that little stunt of yours, and now as a result we have 1 fist out of commission and 2 others currently unaccounted for. Freya spoke calmly, but she was somewhat worried. True, she didn't know Fenrir too well, yet she still thought of him as a very vital member. Both for his loyalty and dedication, he was someone that Freya at least felt she could put some trust in, opposed to people like Loki or Berserker. Of course, she wasn't the only one to think like this. Come on, what are you guys worrying about? Fenrir already proved that he can handle that punk Kenichi with ease. Odds are he'll show up soon enough. Some eyes narrowed at the comment made by Valkyrie, as she had never been known for her sympathy or caring of anyone, unless it had whiskers and said meow. Despite her reassuring words, Loki still didn't look too convinced. That's easy for you to say, Valkyrie. If it was just Shirahama, then I wouldn't be worried in the slightest. Some of the fists redirected their attention to Loki, while Valkyrie actually stood up with her eyes narrowing. And just what exactly do you mean by that? Loki's normally cheerful and creepy face hardened slightly, indicating that he was obviously not enjoying to spill the details. Unfortunately, someone else was with Shirahama at the docks, someone I believe you're familiar with. He paused for a moment, and his mouth twitched slightly at his next words. I believe you refer to her as Dere Cow, aka Mio Furinji? It took a good deal of Valkyrie's willpower not to either explode in anger at the mention of her mortal enemy, or to show signs of worry at the knowledge of Fenrir's possible opponent. Oh man, that's not good. As much as I hate to admit it, that big-breasted bimbo is a lot tougher than anyone I've ever fought before. And knowing her, she probably got in Fenrir's way. The fact that Fenrir hasn't contacted us yet doesn't bode well. I just hope that idiot managed to save himself. Things were a lot more interesting with him around. Though she would never say it out loud like Freya and Siegfried, Valkyrie had developed an interest in Fenrir. Even though he proved himself to be a tough and at times ruthless fighter, he still held a deep sense of allegiance and camaraderie that she had never seen before. He was simply different from the people she was used to and as a result wanted to get to know him better, or at least fight him to see just how good he was. Though right now things were not looking good. Strangely enough, Odin seemed perfectly calm, which was strange considering the circumstances. It would appear that Kenichi and his Shinpaku friends will prove to be more of a nuisance than I originally expected. Though with Siege fried out and Hermit missing, things will be a bit shakier around here. As all the fists contemplated their next move, the fighting below continued, a pair of nameless thugs just finishing up their fight. It wasn't much to look at as it was a completely one-sided battle. One of the two was a boy of average height with brown hair and eyes, lean build, wearing a maroon shirt and jeans with black shoes. His opponent was a much larger individual with a thicker build, green shirt, and black jeans along with a shaved head and scar over his left eye. He also held a very cocky grin on his face, showing that he was a rather arrogant individual. All the fist's eyes shifted to the ring as they watched the two combatants. The smaller one of the two was currently on the offensive, attacking his opponent with a series of well-placed punches and kicks. It was obvious he had some skill. Unfortunately, there didn't seem to be a lot of power behind the strikes as the larger fighter merely shrugged them off. Naturally, the fists quickly lost interest as the smaller fighter tried one more attempt to win and lashed out with his right fist. This time the larger fighter quickly grabbed his opponent's wrist before throwing him around the room and out of the ring with ease. His arrogant grin still present, the fighter turned to the fists who were sitting in the shadows. "Well, what do you think? Are you gonna make me one of the fists? I could just replace one of those idiots, Hermit or Fenrir." As he insulted the two fists, Valkyrie, Freya and surprisingly Thor all tensed up, preparing to retaliate at the comment. "Oh, so you think you can replace me as one of the fists, do you?" The fighter suddenly felt a chill go down his spine along with the feeling of an oppressive presence behind him. Slowly he turned around to find none other than Fenrir standing no more than 10 feet away from him. Seeing their comrade present again, the other fists quickly calmed down, and some of them released a breath they didn't know they had been holding. Loki looked especially happy, glad to see that his little pet project was still in one piece. The group stayed silent, however, watching Fenrir deal with the overconfident fighter who had now broken into a cold sweat, all his confidence gone. Fenrir merely stood there, glaring at the fighter with his ice-cold eyes, further frightening the fighter. "If you want to take my position, then feel free to go ahead and try to take it." However, the once arrogant fighter merely stood there as if glued to the spot. Thus he stayed rooted while Fenrir merely shook his head in disappointment. "Well, if you aren't going to fight me, then get lost." His last words were spoken with such intensity that all those present could literally feel the level of fury present in them. Thus it wasn't too surprising, at least to the other fists, to watch the fighter be blown backwards. Unnoticed by all, Odin's eyes widened slightly at the exchange. Impressive, so he knows how to properly channel his Ki and use it against his opponent. Though he still needs practice with it, to know such an advanced technique says a great deal about Fenrir. I better keep a closer eye on him from now on. Fenrir took one last look at the downed flunky. Unless you plan to stand by what you say, you shouldn't run your mouth like that. Keep that in mind the next time you decide to speak out of your ass. The hooded fist then made his way over to his comrades as Odin rose to his feet to greet him. "Good to see you're alright, Fenrir. We were starting to get worried about you." Fenrir slowly kneeled in front of the others as a sign of respect. "Sorry about that, but unfortunately I hit a bit of a roadblock during the mission and needed a little time to get back on my feet." Before Odin could reply, Thor quickly stood up. "How's Siegfried, is he okay?" Fenrir turned to the large sumo warrior. "His injuries were surprisingly severe, but I was able to get him to the hospital fairly quickly, and the doctors told me that he should be fine after a few days." Thor quickly broke out into a large smile. "That's good to hear." This response actually got a small hidden smile out of Fenrir as well. Even though he had been with Ragnarok for some time now, he still hadn't managed to learn very much about most of the individual fists. For the most part they all acted like you typical thugs who enjoyed either flaunting their power or using it to knock people they didn't like senseless. With the exceptions of Siegfried, Freya and Valkyrie to an extent, he naturally held no feelings for the other fists. So he was glad to see that Thor genuinely cared about his comrades. In a way, the sumo reminded Naruto of Choji. Besides the obvious similarity in size, both fighters cared deeply about their friends and had rather big hearts to boot. This sense of familiarity brought the blonde a sense of comfort. Not that we aren't happy about those news, Fenrir, but I believe we're all dying to know about what exactly happened at the docks. Loki quickly posed the question all the other fists had also on their minds. To that, Fenrir merely looked at Loki and the other fists. Not much to say. I arrived at the scene not long after you and I last met Loki. I quickly headed to the docks to give Sieg some support, but when I got there he was already engaged in combat with Kenichi Shirahama. The ninth fist paused briefly, the other fists noticing how he was now clutching his hands in anger. I prepared to aid Siegfried, but Shirahama managed to finish him off with some kind of strange punching technique I had never seen before. As expected, several of the fists gained curious and interested looks on their faces at the mention of such a technique. A strange kind of punch. I don't suppose you could be a bit more specific? Odin asked, showing Fenrir that he had his full attention. The leader of Ragnarok wanted to know every detail about this technique. Fenrir could only sigh. It's not exactly easy to describe, I was not very close to them. Furthermore, it happened pretty quickly. However, what I do remember was that he got right up to Sieg, placed his fist on his chest, and then seemed to almost unleash sort of a barrage of super fast punches. It must be a very powerful technique for it to defeat Siegfried so easily. We better keep our eyes open for it should we ever fight Shirahama ourselves. All the other fists nodded at Freya's statement before waiting for Fenrir to continue his report. After I saw Shirahama take down Siegfried, I quickly charged him. Unfortunately, Neo-Furinji got in my way. Now everyone was hanging on to his words, even Berserker's attention was focused on Fenrir. Although the fists knew little about Neo-Furinji, it was apparent that she was skilled from what they knew about her, and could be considered a major threat. Thus they were interested to see exactly how well Fenrir had managed to fare against the girl. Naturally, Fenrir was quick to respond. I clashed with Neo-Furinji in a rather difficult battle. She proved to be a much more formidable opponent than I originally expected. Valkyrie quickly got right into the hooded fighter's face, desiring to get the answer to the question that plagued her. Cut the crap already, Fenrir, did the dairy cow lay you out flat or what? Loki, Freya and Odin all seemed to share her curiosity, just without as many words. Fenrir, of course, was somewhat confused about the dairy cow comment but quietly shook it off as he spoke. I was successful in defeating Neo-Furinji. While I suffered some injuries from her attacks, I managed to take her down. At that instant it was completely silent in the room as the group tried to digest the information they had just received. True, they all knew that Fenrir was an extremely capable fighter, and worthy of his position as a fist. Yet no one had expected him to defeat said girl. It proved to be especially shocking for Valkyrie, whose enthusiasm had now been replaced with frustration as she grabbed Fenrir's jacket with a serious look on her face. How? Once again Fenrir was somewhat confused at the question, though he didn't have a chance to speak as Valkyrie asked again, with greater intensity this time. How did you beat her? I fought that blonde bimbo with everything I had and I couldn't even manage to land one hit on her. So tell me, how the hell did you do it? Naruto naturally didn't say anything at first as he quickly understood the actual question. I get it, she wants to know how I beat Furinji so she can do the same thing the next time the two meet. Another sense of nostalgia welled up in Fenrir as he saw traces of his former teammates Sakura and Valkyrie. Both were hot-headed at times and extremely aggressive, but thankfully that was matched by an equally strong desire to improve. It made the normally cold fist smirk somewhat at the many similarities several of the people around him had to his old friends. Still, this wasn't the right time for nostalgia. Naruto redirected his focus to the girl in front of him again. Valkyrie continued to look at the hooded fist with a sense of urgency, awaiting his response. She was hoping to finally get an edge over her rival. Instead, Fenrir softly pushed her arms away from him before slowly walking forward. The red-haired fighter simply stood there before adopting a look of pure anger, preparing to rip her esteemed comrade a new one. I'll tell you later, Valkyrie. Her fury suddenly halted as she turned to Fenrir with a somewhat shocked look. She was even more surprised when the normally cold fighter looked at her with a kind look in his eyes. If you want, I'll teach you a few ways to deal with her, just not right now. Is that alright with you? The normally violent Taekwondo fighter found herself unable to respond. Since she had quit being Freya's student, no one in Ragnarok had ever offered to teach her anything. Mostly because of her conviction to follow her own way, but still, this didn't mean she wouldn't like a little helpful advice here and there. So it was pretty shocking to hear that exact thing from Fenrir. Though still shell-shocked, she noticed the others staring at her, so she quickly shook it off before making her way forward. However, once she was a few feet ahead of Fenrir, she spoke up. Alright, I'll hold you to that little promise. She then turned to him with a small but tough-looking smile on her face. But if you don't deliver, then I'm gonna have to kick your ass into the pavement, pal. Fenrir actually chuckled at her attempt to appear cool. I'll keep that in mind. He then quickly lost his humorous tone as he looked back to Odin. Now that Mjolfiringi has been incapacitated, at least for now, what will our next move be? I figure it's quite obvious what we should do now. Eyes quickly turned to Loki, who was now grinning and chuckling like normal. His expression showed that he had something evil running through his mind. Thanks to Fenrir here, we have not only shown that we can handle Shirahama, but also his little blonde attack dog as well. That alone will make those Shinpaku fools hesitant to attack us. Plus, with one of their strongest members taken care of, it's the perfect chance to hit them where it hurts. Freya, Odin and Fenrir all nodded, though Thor seemed a little lost. If that's the case, then what should we do? Those Shinpaku guys have already shown they won't give in to fear or intimidation tactics. Plus, beating them up doesn't seem to help either. What options does that leave us with? Loki quickly gained a dangerous gleam in his eyes at the sumo's question. It's obvious. We need to take Shirahama down, and I'm not just talking about beating him up. I mean putting him down hard. The fourth fist chuckled at his idea, even though he didn't expose many details. After a moment, Loki decided to reveal his plan. The other Shinpaku fools view him, and that alien freak Naijima, as their pillars of strength and support. Once we take them down for good, the whole organization will fall along with them. All other fists present absorbed the information as Loki continued. The best way to take Shirahama down is to lure him out and get him to fight us one-on-one. Freya quickly spoke up. Forgive me, Loki, but this is what we have been doing from the beginning, and it hasn't yielded any positive results so far. Valkyrie snorted at the remembrance of her last encounter with Shirahama. Plus, the odds are that the punk will most likely spend more time trying to run away rather than fighting. We'd just be wasting our time and energy. Not if we give him a reason to stay. Odin's eyes narrowed behind his glasses. What exactly do you have in mind? Loki's grin soon became sinister, as all those around almost cringed at the sight of it. Shirahama is as predictable as a cheap Saturday morning cartoon. When there's nothing to be gained or lost in a fight, he runs 100 miles in the opposite direction. However, as we have seen at our most recent encounter, the instant someone he knows is in danger, he arrives in a heartbeat, ready to fight. All we have to do is find someone who could lure him into the open and then crush him mercilessly. Loki proceeded to smash his fist into a nearby crate, shattering it for emphasis. The other fists didn't respond immediately to the plan as they mused over the options. Thor and Valkyrie didn't seem too wild about the idea, since they weren't exactly crazy about the whole concept of kidnapping. Freya seemed impartial, at least that was how she appeared. Berserker, as expected, didn't seem to care one way or the other, while Odin just sat there, waiting for the others' input. I don't think we should resort to such a tactic. Loki's eyes shot up from behind his glasses and his head darted towards the absolute last person he had expected to reject his plan. Fenrir, what the hell are you talking about? I figured out of all of us you'd be the most willing to go along with this plan if it meant taking Shirahama down for good. Plus, how is this any different from your plan at the docks? Loki quickly took a step back when he saw the cold look in Fenrir's eyes when he mentioned his last plan. The cold eyes slowly softened, though they still held a look of disgust. I admit that I was willing to resort to such tactics at first, but now I realize how foolish it was. Don't misunderstand me. I want to take Shirahama down, but not this way. Now it was Valkyrie's turn to be curious. Although she still didn't know much about Fenrir, She knew he was behaving differently than his usual ice-cold self. I don't get it. I mean, I'm not crazy about the idea of kidnapping someone either, but why are you so against it suddenly? Fenrir was hesitant to speak as he turned his back slightly to the fists. I admit that I wanted Shurahama to be brought down, but I didn't fully consider the possible consequences. Because of that, Siegfried almost got killed. He spoke with guilt in his voice, meriting looks of sympathy from Thor and Valkyrie while the others remained impartial. Truthfully, I didn't expect Shurahama to show up. I mainly set that stunt up as a means to prove once and for all that he was what I believed him to be, a spineless coward who would rather abandon his friends than fight. Instead, he not only proved me wrong, but as a result Siegfried suffered for my ignorance. We can't simply use these cheap tactics against him, or else they will backfire in our faces. If we intend to take Shurahama down for good, we must be smart about it, and consider all outcomes and options. He spoke the last words with utmost seriousness, indicating how strongly he felt towards this notion. As expected, the remaining fists seemed divided on the idea. Fenrir mentally measured his chance for success. Valkyrie and I aren't on the best of terms, but I figure she'll stand by me. Then there's Thor, who seems like a pretty stand-up guy, plus he looked really down about what happened to Siegfried. As for Freya, I still can't really tell where she stands, though I already know how Loki, Odin and Berserkers will answer. Loki, however, didn't seem patient enough to wait for a collective response. Well, that's all fine and dandy, Fenrir, but I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. Fenrir's eyes narrowed at the fourth fist's words. This can't be good. Truth was that while Fenrir was still thankful to Loki for getting him into Ragnarok, that was about where his loyalty to him stopped. Since joining, he had always had his suspicions about the fourth fist, knowing he wasn't the kind of person you could easily trust. Plus, what he had heard about said fist didn't help much. So he could already tell Loki intended to say something to convince the fists to support his side. Unfortunately, Fenrir, we don't have the time to be patient or calculating about this. While you may have defeated Shurahama's big-breasted bodyguard, he still defeated Siegfried. Knowing that alien freak Najima, he'll probably spread word about how his stupid alliance's commander managed to beat another one of the fists all across the town. It won't be long before the names of the 9 deadly fists of Ragnarok are dragged through the mud and we're seen as nothing more than a bunch of pathetic weaklings. With those last words, Loki managed to gain a small grin on his face as he caught a glance of the other fists. That should help throw some wood into the fire. As expected, all the fists save Fenrir gained looks of frustration, anger, and retribution on their faces. Most of them had worked exceedingly hard for their skills and enjoyed being both respected and feared for them. So the idea that they would be underestimated and even mocked as a result of the Shinpaku alliance obviously wasn't going to sit well with them. Fenrir could only shake his head in disappointment. You guys really can't tell me you're going to ignore all I've just said and attack Shurahama blindly just because your egos might get bruised, are you? Loki could only smirk as the fists glared slightly at Fenrir. Hate to break it to you, Fenrir, but in Ragnarok one of our most important jobs is to keep our image intact. If people don't respect us for our skills, we become nothing more than dead weight. However, if you want to run away like a coward like Hermit did, then fine. Fenrir growled in response, preparing to counter when a voice halted them. Who are you calling a coward, Loki? The room suddenly became eerily quiet as all eyes darted to a familiar hooded individual standing in the doorway of the warehouse. Loki quickly lost his grin and started to sweat slightly while Fenrir actually gained a slight grin on his face. Natsu Tanimoto aka Hermit, the 6th fist of Ragnarok, had returned. Scene change, Ryozampiku night time. It was rather silent in Ryozampiku as Kenichi sat quietly on the floor, watching Mio as she recovered from the battle with Fenrir. Even though Akasame had told him that she would be fine, the young disciple couldn't help but stay at her side. The peaceful expression on the girl's face helped to ease some of the tension he had been feeling. Yet even so, he was still somewhat on edge. His mind focused on Fenrir's last words before he had disappeared. Unless you want to see more of your friends end up like Blondie here, I suggest you start taking your training seriously or watch everyone you care about get hurt protecting your sorry ass. I know that Fenrir said that I need to get stronger, but how can I even hope to stand against someone like him? He's already beaten me once and now Mio, what chance do I even have? He thought back to his words he had spoken to his masters, to his vow to get stronger to defeat Ragnarok. This caused him to let out a depressed sigh. Man, I must seem pretty pathetic right now. Here I was saying all that stuff about getting stronger even though I probably don't have a chance in hell of winning. And now I sitting here, drowning in self-pity. The boy slowly clutched his head in frustration, trying to think of a solution for his mental conflict. Something on your mind, Kenichi? The boy's eyes quickly shot up as he turned around to find the elder standing in the doorway. Oh, elder, I didn't see you there. I take it you're here to see Mio? The elder, however, slowly shook his head in response. To an extent, yes, but I'm also here to see you, Kenichi. Me? What for? I'm doing just fine. Kenichi said, though it was obvious by his tone that he was lying, which the wise elder easily recognized. You should know better than to lie to an old man, Kenichi. We have a tendency to know when something is bothering someone, and I can tell you still have something on your mind. Kenichi wasn't quick to respond as first, slowly looking at the floor, which caused the elder's eyes to narrow. Is this about that Fenrir boy, Kenichi? Kenichi was slow to respond, showing that he had hit the nail on the head. Elder, have you ever fought against someone who seemed so much stronger than you that you could never hope to catch up to him no matter how hard you tried? The old master's brows furrowed as he pondered the question before he slowly took a seat in front of his disciple. Well, Kenichi, that's not an easy question to answer. I'm sure you are aware that there are plenty of people out there who will seem vastly stronger than you at first. But you can't let that discourage your progress. After all, one of the most important things in learning martial arts is to keep practicing to improve. Kenichi, however, didn't seem satisfied with the answer. I know that, elder, I do. It's just, well, one of my goals when I started training here at Ryozanpaku was to become strong enough to match my skills to Myo's. His eyes softened as he mentioned the girl he secretly cared for. When I saw her fight for the first time, I was amazed at how strong and graceful she was. Since then I've been training. I've tried hard to catch up to her and never gotten even remotely close. Slowly the boy's eyes hardened again, causing the elder to gain a saddened look. Yet Fenrir managed to do what I couldn't. He managed to beat Myo after fighting her just once. Myo practically went all out against him, and look what happened. It soon became harder for the boy to continue speaking as he clutched the fabric of his pants in frustration. I know I said I would train harder so I could beat him in Ragnarok, but how can I ever hope to when even Myo couldn't defeat him? At the end of his tirade, Kenichi felt a soft hand on his shoulder and opened his eyes, only to see the elder's face with a kind smile on it. I understand your frustration, Kenichi, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. After all, there are plenty of fighters out there who are much stronger than Myo or Fenrir are, but they've had decades of more training and experience. However, if you continue to work hard and improve, then the gap between you and them will grow smaller with each passing day. Just remember, in martial arts you only ever truly lose a fight when you either quit or die. The words seemed to work as the once distraught boy seemed to calm down slightly. Thanks for the advice, elder. I feel much better now. He slowly got up. He had stayed at Myo's side for a while and was in need of some rest himself. As he made his way to the door, he took one last look at Myo before disappearing into the confines of Ryozanpaku. That boy needs to have more confidence in himself. I have no doubt that with proper training and time, Kenichi will become an excellent master. However, the smile slowly left his face as his eyes turned to his injured and bedridden granddaughter, more precisely the burn wound still present on her abdomen. The elder's face slowly became serious as he mused over the connection he had made the previous night concerning Fenrir's teacher. Still, I fear that Kenichi will need more than confidence if he wants to defeat this opponent, if he was really trained by the man I'm thinking of. At that, the elder once again let his mind drift back to a time long ago when he had first encountered said individual. After all this time, I never imagined he would appear again. Whatever the case is, one thing is for sure. Things are going to get extremely rough in the following weeks. Scene change, Ragnarok's warehouse. It was completely silent when all eyes focused on the once absent Sixth Fist, who was now standing before them. The lower-ranked members quickly backed away out of fear of the Fist's wrath, while the other Fist stayed silent and cool-headed. Hermit stood silently for a moment before proceeding towards the group at a slow pace. I have to say, I'm surprised. From what I heard, you managed to screw up big time, Loki. The fourth fist twitched slightly as he tried to maintain his composure at the remark while adopting a cocky look on his face. Pretty big talk for someone who turned tail and ran away after losing a fight. From my point of view, Hermit, you're in no position to criticize anyone. The cold-hearted Kempo fighter slowly started to radiate anger towards the blue-haired trickster, showing he was ready to fight. However, his attention slowly turned to his houseguest, who was now approaching him rather quickly. Before anyone could say anything, Fenrir quickly spun to the left, lowering himself almost to the ground and unleashing a fierce high kick. Hermit, however, used his speed to block the attack with an upside-down knife hand. The sixth fist's cold eyes peered into the darkness that hid Fenrir's face before he gained a cold smirk. Careful how you treat your landlord, pal, otherwise I might just be inclined to evict your sorry ass. Fenrir merely wordlessly pushed himself back up before lowering his leg and turning his back to his opponent. That was for stealing all my food and leaving me to starve, you jackass. The comment actually caused a few chuckles from some of the people present, while Hermit merely drew back his own hand. Quit your complaining. All the food was in my fridge, and if I want to take it, I will. Besides, you're still alive, aren't you? His comment managed to rouse a little anger in the capoeira fighter, showing that he was eager to continue their little bout. Odin, however, quickly stood up from his seat before waving his hand. That's enough. All of you. Remember, there is to be no fighting among us, understood? The two fists slowly backed away from each other whilst Loki slowly turned his back to the group. Well, this has been fun and all, but I've got a plan to put together. See you around. As he made his way to the door, he paused for a moment before turning his head to the other two fists. Hermit, I'd be careful about shooting your mouth off around here. You don't want to piss the wrong person off. With a chuckle, the fourth fist left the group in silence. The first fist slowly turned his back to the group. Well, I believe that everything has been said that needed to be discussed. Hermit, due to what happened, I'm willing to ignore your absence up to this point. Just don't try it again. He slowly walked down the pile of crates, slowly walking past Fenrir. One more thing, Fenrir. I recommend you keep that temper of yours in check. We can't have you and Hermit fighting each other at this point. The first fist took another step before turning around once more, looking at Fenrir with a pair of extremely cold eyes. Remember to keep that self-righteous attitude to yourself. It has no place here in Ragnarok and will only hold you back as a martial artist. Keep that in mind. It took a great deal of the ninth fist's willpower to not lash out against the first fist. Of all the fists, Odin was the one he trusted the least, even less than Loki. The purple-haired teen reminded him greatly of Orochimaru, namely a person willing to do anything for power, a person who didn't care how many people he had to step over to get it. Even though he was technically his superior, the ninth fist had never seen him in that way, and that little comment only served to further his distrust. His anger was quickly calmed, however, when he sensed a rather large individual behind him. Quickly turning around, he was surprised to find the large and imposing Thor in front of him. Naruto didn't know too much about the sumo fighter other than that he was extremely dedicated to his fighting style, and seemed to value honor to an extent. Still, he had never actually spoken with him before, thus he was confused what he could possibly want from him. Something I can help you with, Thor? The brown-haired sumo didn't react at first, but slowly a grateful smile spread over his face. I just wanted to say thanks for helping out Siegfried. His tone was kind and honest, which the blonde found comforting. Siegfried's been my friend for a long time and probably the only person I can really trust in this gang. His smile quickly grew into a full-blown grin. Now I know I can trust you too, pal. So if you need any help with something, just give me a call and I'll be there for you. Fenrir started to wave his hands in front of himself, slightly embarrassed at the praise. It was nothing, really, Thor. Siegfried is my friend too, and helping him was naturally what any friend would have done in this situation. You don't owe me anything. Unfortunately, the sumo refused to listen, his eyes now glowing with flames of passion. I cannot do that. A sumo never breaks a promise to anyone, and I'll stand by that oath no matter what. Fenrir could only shake his head in defeat. Guess there's no point in arguing with the eager. Well, at least it's nice to know there's someone else in this place I can actually call a friend. His expression grew sour again as he shot a glance at Hermit. Too bad I can't say the same about Captain Stick Up His Ass. I swear, it's like being with Sasuke all over again. Hell, I think I'd rather deal with the current Sasuke than this guy. Though he wished it, the sad fact was that Fenrir had no place to go and Hermit's house was the only place available. So even though it killed him a little on the inside, the hooded fist slowly made his way back to the house with his landlord walking silently next to him. Just when I was starting to enjoy the silence in that place. Scene change, 3 days later at Ryozanpaku. A new day had begun at the dojo, and it seemed to regain some of its original fire with it. Granted, Myo was still recovering from her battle, but Kenichi had started to act upon his previous conviction to train both harder and more seriously. However, keep your guard up and make sure to block with your right arm, otherwise your opponent can slip right past it, like this. A loud crash echoed throughout the area. Ayaha! The young disciple yelled in both fear and pain as he once again flew against the wall before falling onto the hard floor. His karate master Sakukai, dressed in his gi, stood not too far away, rubbing the back of his head in frustration. Geez kid, what did I tell you about blocking just now? Kenichi could only groan in response as he slowly stood back up. The pair had been practicing to improve Kenichi's blocking technique in order to better combat Fenrir's fast-moving attacks. As such, Sakaki had decided to teach him how to block attacks from a more powerful opponent, which in translation meant he used Kenichi as a punching bag. Yet oddly enough, the boy hadn't even complained. He had simply stood in front of his master with a fiery look of determination in his eyes, saying he was ready for anything. Now he was paying for it. Sakaki sighed. Alright Kenichi, let's take a break, I don't want to bang you up too bad. The karate master slowly turned around to find himself a can of beer. But his disciple apparently wasn't ready to quit yet. Master Sakaki, wait please. Can't we continue? Sakaki looked back to see Kenichi standing again, albeit breathing somewhat harder, meriting a look of pity from the normally boisterous master. Sorry kid, if we train you too hard then you won't have enough energy for later. Save your energy for now and we'll continue in a bit. He then proceeded to leave the room. Kenichi slowly leaned himself against the wall of the dojo, trying to catch his breath. Well, it's not like I thought this would be easy. Still, I need to keep training and get stronger. I just hope I can get strong fast enough before someone else gets hurt. As the martial artist in training mused to himself, he failed to notice a small shadow gradually making its way over to him. It wasn't long before he was covered by the shadow of said mysterious individual. Kenichi was barely able to turn to face the person before his face met a red mallet. Even though it was a toy, it still hurt a bit. With a tired groan, Kenichi addressed his assailant. "Ow, damn it, Anoka, what did I tell you about coming here when I'm training?" His brown eyes focused on a very young girl of about 13 years of age. She had brown hair which was done in the same peculiar style as Kenichi and light purple eyes, garbed in a simple pink shirt and purple skirt. She was Kenichi's younger and often annoying little sister Anoka, who unfortunately had a nasty little habit of clinging to him like a tick. As Kenichi continued to lightly glare at his sister, the young girl merely pulled back her little toy mallet before flashing a bright smile at him. "Come on Kenichi, Scarface said you could take a break, so why don't we have some fun, huh?" Her smile however slowly dropped as she heard her brother sigh. "I'm sorry Anoka, but I just don't have the time to play with you right now. I'm busy with my martial arts training." The small girl's face quickly turned sour as she pouted. "You always say that. Come on, it won't kill you to go out and have some fun, will it?" Kenichi however merely stood up before turning his back to the girl. "Anoka, please just go away for now, I'm busy." He then walked away to get some water, leaving the small girl alone, though it hurt him on the inside to leave his sister like this. "Sorry Anoka, the truth is I wouldn't mind having some fun right now. However, I don't have the luxury of time, I need to get stronger so I'll be ready for the next time Ragnarok shows up. I hope you can forgive me at some point." That seemed a little harsh, don't you think Kenichi? The boy's eyes quickly widened as he turned around to find his judo master standing not too far away, looking at him with a look of sorrow. "You've been taking your training much more seriously as of late, and I'm glad for that. Still, you shouldn't try and push yourself too hard. After all, You're still a teen and should have fun once in a while. Especially if it is with your family. The young disciple smiled somewhat in agreement, but was obviously still a little conflicted about it. It was apparent to the jujitsu master that he was still thinking about Myo's injuries, even though she was recovering quickly. Look, Kenichi, why don't you spend some time with your sister, and we'll train some more when you get back, alright? Kenichi had paused for a moment before nodding in response. Alright, master, but just for a little while, then it's right back to training. The young boy slowly turned around and looked for his sister. Hey Anoka, listen, if you still want to we can. But he found only an empty room, no girl present. Now of course Kenichi was a bit worried, but Anoka knew the neighborhood better than him, and had been coming back and forth from the dojo without him following her, so she'd probably be okay. Though disheartened, he decided to head back to training. And yet he couldn't help but to feel slightly uneasiness for some reason. I hope Anoka will make it back home alright. Scene change, the middle of the city, where Kenichi lives. Stupid Kenichi, spending all his time training and not even giving me the time of day. The young girl muttered to herself, kicking a rock on the sidewalk away as she made her way through town. The crowds of people took notice of the young girl by herself, but didn't pay it too much mind as she seemed preoccupied with her own thoughts. The young girl, however, seemed to have tuned out of the rest of the world as she simply looked up at the sun, musing back to the time when she and Kenichi were practically attached at the hip. Now that Big Brother's gotten all serious and stuff, who am I supposed to hang out with? Apache and Shigeru are fun to be around, but still. Her words seemed to go unanswered until a rather loud and angry voice rang out in the distance. Remind me again. Why the hell you're following me through town? Several eyes tuned to a rather interesting and somewhat violent conversation being made, including Anoka's, whose curiosity had been piqued. She quickened her pace before her eyes landed on a pair of teenage boys around Kenichi's age. One of them was a pretty boy with a very handsome face that most girls would kill themselves over. He was dressed in a brown-colored jacket, black shirt, blue pants, and brown shoes. His hair was a light blonde color, and neatly combed over his head. His eyes, however, were light purple and held a very cold look that most would find intimidating. Anoka, however, merely thought, wow, talk about a pretty boy. Though he certainly looks kind of funny with his face like that. She then turned her attention to the second boy, who the first boy seemed to be arguing with. I told you why already. Do you really need a reminder? You still owe me for the food you jacked so you could go brood in the forest for a week. I'm gonna make sure you pay me back by refilling the fridge and cupboards so I don't have to eat that crap you stomach every day. The second boy was somewhat similar to the first, at least in terms of height and build. His face was narrower, however, just not as defined as the face of the other boy. He wore a simple white jacket with a black shirt, jeans, and black shoes. Like the other, he had blonde hair as well, but at a much darker shade in a spike style that almost looked like the sun itself. The most interesting things about him, however, were his eyes, which were deep blue in color. While not cold like the other boys, they seemed to contain many other emotions the young girl couldn't decipher. The other interesting thing about him were the 3 whisker-like marks he had on each cheek, almost making him look like a cat in a way. Anoka found herself intrigued by the pair's constant bickering, watching them exchange insults with each other, and the occasional banter. For the last time, I never brewed, you asshole, I was training. Unlike you, I actually worked towards improving my skills. The purple-eyed blonde spoke with a cold and agitated tone which only merited an angry response from the other teen. First off, I train just as hard as you do, pal, probably even a lot harder. Second, you do brood, you're doing it right now. Hell, I'm surprised you don't have a little cloud hanging over your head, you're such a negative jerk. His words merited a somewhat quick response as the light blonde-haired teen jumped back, his hands raised in knife position. Naturally, the other took a step back and lowered himself, placing one arm in front and the other behind his back along with one of his legs. The purple-eyed teen glared at him. You've been getting on my nerves a lot lately, what do you say, shall we settle this right here and now? The darker-haired blonde seemed to share the sentiment. That's the wisest thing you've said today, though I think we should refrain from doing this here, especially in front of so many people. Both teens continued to stare at each other silently as they continued to move forward. Unfortunately, their attention was so focused on each other that the lighter-haired teen failed to notice a trio of individuals walking by him till he brushed up against one of them. As if it was a reflex, the one who was bumped into quickly turned around with an angry look on his face. "Hey, why don't you watch where you're going, you punk?" His words caused Natsu to stop before looking at the man with a cynical look. "Sorry, you say something?" The teen quickly developed a vein of anger as he walked up to the cynical blonde before grabbing him by the collar of his jacket. "Look here, boys, we got ourselves a little wise ass. Didn't anyone ever teach you it isn't polite to just bump into people without apologizing?" Normally Hermit would have just brushed these guys off or led them to an alley to beat the crap out of them. Unfortunately, his conversation with his roommate had shortened his fuse considerably and was now ready to blow. Naruto, of course, could tell what was going to happen and prepared to intervene. "Don't you bully the pretty boy, you punks." The thug quickly loosened his grip and turned around to determine the source of this shout. What the hell, OH? He found himself unable to continue speaking as a small red toy hammer smacked him square in the face. Those present watched the scene in shock. Not only at the interaction but also at the new assailant, who was surprisingly the little girl who had been previously watching the bickering blondes. Most people were shocked and awed. Naruto was actually amused and Natsu was plain shocked. The teen that had been punished quickly shook himself out of his daze before glaring hatefully at the girl. "You little brat, this ain't none of your business." Anoka, however, stood her ground, her hammer defiantly in hand. "Says you. If you plan to fight someone, it should be fair, one-on-one, and you shouldn't fight unless it's absolutely necessary. You're not playing fair, pal." Anoka recited some of what she remembered the masters telling her. The thug and his goons, however, didn't look too convinced as the leader slowly made his way over to her. "Oh really, thanks for the input, but I don't play by the rules. That includes not hitting a little girl." The goon quickly struck forward with his knee, intending to strike the girl only for her to leap up using his leg for support, and quickly landed on the ground. Sadly, she lost her balance as she landed and fell on her knee. "Now you're mine!" The thug took the opening and unleashed a punch right at the girl, who could only sit and watch. Grab. Huh! What the hell? The thug suddenly found himself in the vice-like grip of Natsu, who had an especially irritated look on his face. Before the assailant even had a chance to react, a quick chop to the neck caused him to black out. Naturally, the other two tried to jump in, but both quickly found themselves blocked by the spiky-haired blonde, looking at them with cold eyes. "I would advise you pick up your friend and leave, or else you'll end up like him." Sadly, the two didn't heed the warning and charged him. Before the two even had the chance, the teen flipped forward, landed on both hands before spinning on his palm, delivering a roundhouse kick right into their faces. After the kick, he gracefully used his remaining spin to jump and land on his feet again before the two thugs unconsciously fell to the ground. All those watching were awestruck by the display, some whispering to each other, taking pictures, or just standing there. Naruto simply turned his back to the thugs. "You done showing off already?" Naruto quickly developed a frown on his face before he looked at Natsu, who simply returned the expression. "I swear to God, this guy is a bigger buzzkill than old Sasuke, Neji, and Shikamaru all rolled into one." Still keeping his cool, he merely replied, "Just shut up and keep walking." The pair slowly walked away but weren't able to get far. "Hey, wait a minute!" Both fighters slowly turned to the girl, who was still sitting on the ground, looking at them with big puppy dog eyes and obvious fake tears coming down her cheeks. "You aren't just gonna leave an injured girl like me here, are you?" Their eyes quickly focused on the injury in question, which was nothing more than a little scrap on the knee. Was it painful, for a little girl? Yes. Life-threatening? No way. Now, of course, neither teen was really in the most cheerful of moods, but they really couldn't leave the girl alone like this. "Guess we've got to take her back to the house," the two thought simultaneously. Naturally, Naruto wanted to approach the girl first, since he knew Hermit wasn't big on being nice to anyone. But he took notice of something in the normally cold fighter's eyes, a faint trace of sadness and longing he had never seen on his face before. It was strange to say the least, and it seemed to remain as the boy slowly picked the little girl up before walking in the direction of the house. Naruto, however, could only look on with interest. "That's different. I figured he'd want to leave the girl and then have me step in to tell him otherwise. I wonder what's up with him. The ninth fist, however, didn't have the time to question himself as Hermit practically ordered him to get a move on, the two heading towards the house with their new temporary charge in tow. Scene change, Tanimoto Mansion. Well, this is certainly an interesting turn of events. Never thought I'd see this. Naruto quietly mused to himself, as he watched the normally cold and cruel Hermit disinfecting the girl's injury before placing a bandage on it. The only way this could get any weirder was if he kissed it too. Hermit seemed oddly different around the girl. True, he still wore his normal facial expression that read "get the F% hashtag away from me," yet he didn't seem as cold as usual, which intrigued his blonde companion. It was also apparent that Hermit was somewhat uneasy about something as he quickly finished the treatment. There, your knee should be fine now, right? The girl's eyes quickly darted to the small bandage on her leg. Slowly she swung her leg back and forth to test it out before dropping off the couch and walking, a smile on her face. That's amazing. My leg doesn't hurt at all. Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, Hermit ignored the comment as he put the first aid kit away. Good, now get out already. However, much to Naruto's amusement, the Kempo fighter's words fell on deaf ears as she instead began to poke and prattle around the house with amazement over its size. Wow, this house is huge. You guys must be really rich to live in a house like this. The girl slowly paused for a moment as she turned to the pair, her eyes darting back and forth between the two with a calculating gaze. It made the two feel strangely uncomfortable for some reason. Are you two brothers? Natsu palmed in his face in response while Naruto actually chuckled at the comment. Listen, brat, this idiot is my cousin who I'm unfortunately stuck living with for a while. Naruto chose to play along with the charade. It's not like living with you is a picnic either. The sixth fist could only pinch the bridge of his nose before he redirected his attention to the girl, who was now touching every valuable thing in the room much to his annoyance. Listen, brat, would you just leave already? Instead, she simply continued to move around, ignoring every word from the boy's mouth. The whole scene was actually making Naruto laugh a little on the inside as he thought back to a similar series of interaction between him and Irika. The thought made him feel a little sad actually. It's funny, no matter where I go, there's always something that reminds me of life back in Konoha. Guess there are just some things in life you can't ever escape from. He mentally paused as he watched how the girl whom Hermit had long since given up on reasoning with noticed a picture frame lying on one of the tables near the fireplace. That merited a curious look from the spiky-haired blonde who had seen the frame before but never expressed much interest in it. She slowly picked the frame up and took note of the people it held. Wow, is this a picture of your family? In an instant, Hermit's face hardened as he gave the girl a harsh glare. Put that down now! The frame left the girl's grasp in an instant. Naruto's eyebrow quirked at the reaction before his own face hardened somewhat. Just calm down, Natsu, no need to bite the kid's head off. As expected, he was met with another cold glare from the boy who responded with a voice laced with venom. Don't tell me what to do, buddy, or I won't hesitate to kick your sorry ass to the curb. Naruto's and Natsu's face each held a hardened expression as they continued to stare each other down. The atmosphere was extremely tense and the girl was obviously uncomfortable. Yet oddly enough, she was quick to bounce back. Hey, come on, you guys shouldn't fight. Oh, I know, I'll go make us some tea, that ought to lighten things up. She left the room quickly while the two simply stood there like frozen, though it was apparent that Naruto had something he wanted to voice. What's your problem, Natsu? Even for you, that was pretty harsh. I know the kid's a little annoying, but her heart's in the right place. Why are you acting like she's the enemy or something? The silent sixth fist simply turned his back to the blonde. You wouldn't understand even if I explained it to. Just do me a favor and stay the hell out of my business. Obviously, the boy wanted to be left alone, and Naruto was prepared to continue the issue when his phone started to ring. With some hesitant eye on, he picked up the phone. Hello? Well, you gonna tell me no or what? A familiar and violent voice rang from the phone, a voice Naruto recognized immediately. Kizara, is that you? The response was given almost immediately. Who else, or did you forget earlier already? You promised you'd teach me how to handle that damn dairy cow the same way you did. The gears in the blonde's head started to turn as he slowly recalled said words. Oh right, sorry about that. I'm not so. He paused for a moment before redirecting his focus to Hermit, who had placed himself on the couch. At first glance he seemed to be simply brooding, but upon closer inspection it was apparent that his eyes and ears were focused on the little girl currently having her way with the kitchen. Even through his stone-like face, Naruto could easily see that the boy was actually interested in what the girl was doing and to an extent anxious. It was obvious that there was something about that girl that was bringing out a different side of the normally cold fighter, a side he had never seen before. Hey, Fenrir, you still there or what? If you punk out on me, I'll use my foot to pave the road with your ass. Chuckling slightly at the comment, he straightened himself. Don't worry, Kizara, I'll show you what I did. He paused briefly. Though we may need Thor's help for this. Don't ask why, just meet me at his ring in half an hour. Alright, but you'd better be there or else. The line went slight as Naruto put his phone away before heading upstairs to get his Fenrir garb. Once he gathered his things, he made his way to the door. Hey, where are you going? Naruto paused to see the girl looking at Naruto with her big purple eyes. His attention now on them, Naruto was met with quite an interesting sight. Due to the incident at the market, the pair hadn't been able to stock up on new supplies, which included tea. So they were for now left with what little food Hermit had managed to bring back with him. Now it had been all cooked together into a pile of orange rice with bits of fish and meat sticking out in various directions. The sight of it made the ninth fist cringe, and yet what he found more surprising was that Hermit was actually eating it. What the hell? I'm upstairs for maybe 2 minutes and this happens. Geez, this just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Shaking himself out of his thoughts, he reached for the door. Sorry, I have to go take care of some things with my friends. I can't stay for the food. Nice meeting you though. He quickly made his way out of the door towards his destination. Hopefully leaving him alone with that girl will help loosen him up a bit. Who knows? Oh, make wrong impression. The pair arrived at Natsu's house and the two martial artists put the girl on a nearby couch. Hey idiot, get the first aid kit. Natsu spoke with a voice so full of contempt that it pissed the other blonde off immediately. Oh, of course, your majesty. Would you like me to fluff your pillow while I'm at it? The mocking tone only angered Natsu the same way his little comment had done to Naruto. Every single time, can't you just once do what I say without making some dumbass comment? As the pair bickered, Anoka watched them with interest. I feel like I've seen something like this before, but where? As she thought about the matter, the shouting match continued. Maybe if you weren't such a lazy ass and did things for yourself once in a while, we wouldn't have these arguments. Naruto nearly shouted, his voice laced with ice, while Natsu remained unfazed. Screw that, this is my house, pal. As far as I'm concerned, you should be down on your knees doing what I say like the dog you are. Naruto's eyes slowly hardened as he prepared to respond. Hermit geared himself up for the onslaught as his housemate was about to unleash his tirade. Yaoi! The room became completely silent. The two blondes slowly turned their heads towards the girl, their necks making a sound similar to a rusty crane turning. Both guys were wearing horror-stricken looks on their faces. The girl, on the other hand, had somehow managed to stand up despite her injury and was pointing at the pair with an odd smile on her face. Naruto managed to muster up enough strength for the effort of choking something out. What did you just say? The girl merely looked at him. That's what you guys are, right? Yaoi. You act just like the characters in a bunch of stories I read online. No one said anything for a moment. Then, in a motion so fast that his form blurred, Naruto dashed for the nearest potted plant and let loose everything he had eaten for the last 2 days. Hermit responded in a similar manner, only he had the grace to use the bathroom. All the while Anoka merely looked at the pair with a confused face. Guess they must be sick.